Data engineering is just a subset of software engineering. In software engineering, you deal with databases. In software engineering, you deal with building out data infrastructure. In software engineering, you deal with building the software that helps you build the pipelines. Therefore, I would argue it's a subset.
No, okay, maybe not a subset of, but
A friend to?
exactly, a friend to, possibly at the same level.
You don't like being beneath me, I think that's the problem.
You're quite a big guy.
Welcome to another episode of Deep Data Discussions, where we have controversial topics we're going to be discussing today, and you either strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. I'm your host, Pierre, and today we have our guest here, Cronje. Let's do this. So Cronje,
Which corner am I in? Am I in the left corner with the brown with the brown shorts? Or
well, let's see. So the topic for today, the controversial topic as it is data engineering is just a subset of software engineering. Disagree. Okay. In this case, I am going to challenge you. I'm going to see where this goes, but I'm going to go with...
really? Is that the card you want to
agree.
play?
Not strongly, because I want to see where this goes. Okay, so let's dig in. Okay, I'll start with this one. So, software engineering is a lot around obviously building and developing systems and infrastructure and codes for various purposes. It could be back-end development, it could be front-end development. And it is, in essence, the engineering, I want to say science, but the engineering of how do you get proper software out into the field. And there's a lot of things around that in terms of developing apps, in terms of developing web applications. And when it comes to data, my argument in this case...
At this point, we should point out he is a software engineer. Small amount of bias, but anyway.
Small amount of bias. So the data itself is almost is part of software engineering in the sense that you have to deal with data. You can't divorce software from the data itself. I've never actually seen anybody building a software system that doesn't need data. That's also something we can discuss, but that's generally what it comes down to. But now you've got an area where you need to move data from source systems to data lakes. You need to build pipelines around moving that data, and then you need to build databases and infrastructure and transformations to build data assets so that you can give that to the different consumers in the business. In software engineering, you deal with databases. In software engineering, you deal with building out data infrastructure. In software engineering, you deal with building the software that helps you build the pipelines. Therefore, I would argue it's a subset.
No. I would argue quite easily that software engineering is a subset of data engineering.
You mean the other way around?
Yeah. Or, okay, maybe not a subset of, but...
a friend to?
Exactly, a friend to, possibly at the same level. Because 100%, I mean...
You don't like being beneath me, I think that's the problem.
You're quite a big guy.
Okay, continue.
Keep it above the table, people. Definitely, software engineering principles have to be applied in terms of data engineering. What I have seen on many occasions is that just because somebody is strong with software engineering, it does not mean that they are good with data engineering.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's where I definitely disagree that software engineering and data engineering is just a subset of. And it's a silly example from my past is I was working with a chap. He was a brilliant software engineer. The guy was a freaking genius. Okay, so great. He starts working with some data, fabulous. And one day he comes to me at the coffee station. I says, you know what? He doesn't know. He doesn't get it. This whole thing with databases, it's a poop show. because, he's now loading data out of this table and it's taking him forever. And it's like, why do people use databases? Because they're so damn slow. And I said, well, hang on, let's have a talk. Let's have a chat. So it turns out he was trying to find 10 records out of 1 million. And his solution was to load the entire 1 million records out of the database every time. And then in memory, for loop through that bad boy to go and find the data that he wants. So, yeah, some select statements were applied and a mind was blown. That's actually quite a kind of a silly example, because if you'd actually just spent some time reading documentation, if he just spent a bit of time reading documentation, then he could have solved the problem for himself.
Know how to use a database.
Exactly. But there are definitely scenarios where you can see that people who are very strong with software and build very good software, they don't have the mindset necessarily to look at the data engineering component of the software they've built and say, cool, I'm generating data, I'm storing data, and I'm retrieving data, but am I doing it in the optimal fashion? Am I applying the best practices in terms of managing my data? Because for them, data is sometimes just, it's a thing. I have to store information about a user, so I'll just pop it in there somewhere. And I have to store some phone book information, so I'll just pop it in there somewhere.
I kind of see where you're going here. What you're saying is, it's such an important specialization because databases can become finicky. Databases requires, any software engineer with his salt should in theory be able to query a database, set up a database, do the indexing and all of that. But it gets technically interesting when you really have to optimize a database, when you have to look at the metrics. It gets super interesting when you're starting to deal with billions of records.
Exactly.
And that's not an easy challenge, specifically on like the kinds of hardware that we've been dealing with, where it's now, look, you can learn the skills, but that means you're going to have to think slightly differently, almost forgo a lot of. So in software engineering, I could actually, what I'm picking up from, how I could explain this is, you have to deal with a lot more stuff and a lot of other stuff. So you can't really go deep and focus on specifically figuring out this data engineering problem.
Exactly.
Whereas in data engineering, that's your job.
That's the focus.
You do not care, you're not going to care about a front end. You don't care about,
I guess tried front ends once, that didn't last long.
But this is actually a good point. So what you're saying is, as you've got people who actually is really good at specializing in front end and user experience, you similarly need people who are really good at specializing in databases.
Exactly.
But I'm still going to stick with the fact that software engineering itself is overarching too.
No, hundreds. No, I would agree with it's an overarching, yes. Because you
need to code.
You need to code. You're not going to just put down. There is a big love in many enterprises for the no-code tools. I have strong opinions on that.
Discussion for the future.
Yeah, this is a family-friendly show, so I won't use any words to describe my feelings. But you need strong software skills to be a good data engineer. With anything. I mean, you can be a great UX engineer,
but you still need good software skills.
You still need good software skills.
MLEs. Machine learning engineers.
Exactly, machine learning engineer, data scientist. You still need strong. It's at the core. Everybody needs software engineering. I mean,
they need to be able to code well.
Exactly, you need to be able to code well. But it's become such a specialized landscape. I mean, we have a picture somewhere with the amount of tools, just kind of in the big data science space, and that doesn't really even touch on UI. And it's thousands. Yeah. UI frameworks, there's one popping up every 50 seconds, basically, it feels like it. So for somebody who's a UX expert, you need to have that focus to say, okay, there's this new UI framework that's got the best function for this X, Y, and Z, or ABC. As a UX guy, that if I want to solve this problem, this is the tool I'm going to use. If I want to solve this problem, I'm going to pick up this tool. I'm not going to try and use this tool to solve this problem because it's going to be a shit show. And the same sense, as you said, with a data engineering backend, it's the same thing. You can, if you're a small company, your kind of mom and pop shop, obviously those kinds of systems don't worry too much about data engineering because you maybe have a database with 10,000 records and you can run that in Excel. Don't, but anyway. But if you're looking at the volumes that we normally deal with, you need to have that specialist skill to say, for this use case, this is actually the best tool for the job.
I think that's the crux of it. What you're saying is the specialization of data engineering is super important for the data-driven organizations, for building out the infrastructure for data scientists. It's the fundamental layer that needs to be there. And by having specialists in those areas, they're able to solve your solution better, quicker, and with the best tools. That's in summary.
Exactly.